customer that we met with last week, again, this is just one customer. It's one of the large ones. We're going to need between 8,000 and 12,000 electricians in the next 3 years just for their projects.
Welcome back to Leadership to Membership. I'm Kenny Cooper, the International President. Today I'm joined with International Secretary Treasurer Paul Noble and Director of Construction, Matt Pauls. We're going to talk a little bit today about the construction industry, but before I start that, I'll throw it over to Paul Noble for a second, let him have a few brief words, and then over to Matt Pauls to kind of tell you what he does day to day. And then we'll get into some content that we want to talk to you about, the membership that's happening in our construction branch. Paul?
Thank you, Kenny. This is good, I think, for our members to see what Matt does every day to help the membership. You don't see it out in the field. You hear I.O., you hear Washington, D.C., but you don't know what these guys do every day to help make our lives better. And, Matt, I'm glad to have you here today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here for sure.
Tell us a little bit about what your day-to-day looks like, Matt, so that the membership out there understands your role and some of the things you do, from the national maintenance agreements to all the different things that you're involved with and your department's involved with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, absolutely. So the construction maintenance department, my team, have experienced reps really from across the country. And they have different perspectives because of that, because as we all know, things are done a little bit differently depending on where you're at in the country. But on a day-to-day basis, we handle everything related to national agreements, the National Maintenance Agreement, General President's Agreement, all the NAB2 agreements, TVA, and so forth. We administer those agreements, so we process requests to utilize those agreements. We deal with issues such as jurisdictional disputes or grievances under those agreements. They all end up, if they can't get resolved locally, they come to the Construction and Maintenance Department. And in a nutshell, frankly, we do anything required to support our construction local unions, and that really varies widely and makes the job interesting for sure. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Matt. And as Paul said, thank you for being here with us today. So some of the things we want to talk about in particular, is data centers. 2 weeks ago, I met with the CEO of Microsoft. I've met in the past with the CEO of Google. We're looking at a boom of data centers coming throughout the United States and North America. I think it's important that the membership understands what that boom looks like. When I was a young man, nuclear powerhouses was the big jobs that everybody flocked to. And now it seems it has shifted to data centers. And as we talk about data centers, one of the things I reminded the Microsoft CEO about is when the Bureau of Labor Statistics says we need 100,000 new electrical workers a year till 2032, I reminded him that's the entire electrical industry, because if we build all these data centers, we got to power them somehow. So there's a combination of talks when we talk about data centers that I think is important that we have those conversations as well, because we got to generate the power necessary for those data centers and the AI technology that's coming with them. So let's just talk a little bit about what you're seeing across the country in spots. It seems like the data center business is booming, and it's going to continue to boom for the next 5 to 10 years at least, the next decade. If you would, let's just talk about that a little bit today.
Sure. Well, to start, maybe let's talk a little bit about what's out there now and what we see coming. There's a little over 5,000 active data centers right now in the United States. There was a little over 6,000 megawatts of a data center load under construction at the end of last year, and it's just going to ramp up from there. To throw some stats out there, about 20% of organizations said that they've deployed already deploying AI, and over 55% are planning to do it in the very near future. So the AI-driven boom is not going to slow. There is the unique thing about AI is, it's going to drive the need for increased power generation to power these data centers, but AI itself is also integral part of these data centers and how they operate. So it's the next 10 years. To give you just a few examples, one example I've been using recently is NV Energy. They indicated that they have a typical daily load of about 8 megawatts. They have requests right now for over 20 megawatts of additional generation capacity just for AI customers. And that's just one example. Another example in the Northeast would be the what was the 3 Mile Island nuclear plant that most people are familiar with. Constellation has entered into Microsoft has entered into a power purchase agreement with Microsoft to get Unit 2 back online, and they're going to purchase all the power that unit generates. So that kind of gives you the scale. You think about that. That's about 1,000 megawatt nuclear power plant unit. That's going to one customer is going to use all the generation capacity that generates.
Yeah, when you think about the generation of electricity for the last 3 decades, it's been pretty much stale. It's been flat. And now as data centers and some of the chip plants come back to the United States, the demand for electricity is higher than it's been a long time. As you said, we've had 2 nuclear power plants that were decommissioned that have been recommissioned for the first time in the history of the United States. Palisades in Michigan and 3 Mile Island, not the one that blew up. Not the unit that blew up.
Right.
It's the good unit. And, as we start looking down that road and generating electricity for those needs, it's all the above. We've talked to the administration. It should be nuclear. It should be wind. It should be solar. It should be gas. It should be all the different types of generation we have. So in conjunction with a lot of these data centers, as you said, we're going to have to build powerhouses at the same time. That was some of the conversations I had with Microsoft, and I know you've seen some of the plans across the country for some of those data centers. Let's talk about some of the pockets that you see some of those things happening.
Sure. There's typically here in the past decade or so, Northern Virginia and some other areas have been kind of the hubs. And in fact, I think Northern Virginia was, if not in the top couple, top few of geographic areas for data centers for quite a long time. But now we're seeing areas outside of that, like Texas, northern Louisiana, Charlotte, North Carolina, Indiana, and a lot of that's being driven by a few different things. Tax incentives, local commitments, to build these facilities is important. Access to power is tremendously important, along with a lot of other things. But we're seeing these things pop up coast to coast. We just had a call with one of the main developers late last week. They broke it into regions. The western region is lagging the central and eastern division, but is going to grow exponentially in the next couple of years. So there's not going to be too many areas that are untouched by this data center boom. And specific sites are going to come down to the specific needs of that customer. Again, where they can get power, where can they get it on the grid. Another important thing that people don't realize is important in these data centers is access to good communications networks as well. That's incredibly important. So all those factors go into citing them. But some of the metro areas aren't seeing these projects as much as some of the more rural and outlying areas because of the size of the projects, the location relative to power availability and so forth.
Speaking on the size, what is the average cost of those data centers when they build them, and what's the average manpower and how long? I know most of that work, when we talk about a data center, is electrical work.
Sure.
So it's big jobs for the IBEW and our membership and stuff.
Definitely electrically heavy. I think it's a little light, but the customer we were on a Zoom with late last week, they threw out the number that for planning that around 200 to 300 electricians per site is a good number, just to ballpark things.
As an average.
As an average, right? And it varies.
It peaks a lot higher than that.
Sure.
And it, ramps up like any other construction site. But
Correct. Yep, absolutely. But that's an average size. But you have to keep in mind most of these locations aren't going to be one data center. They're going to be campuses, and they may have half a dozen, 10, 15, or more data centers on one campus. Again, the customer that we met with last week. Again, this is just one customer. It's one of the large ones. We're going to need between 8,000 and 12,000 electricians in the next 3 years just for their projects.
What are you seeing? We know construction's ever changing, and President Cooper asked the vice presidents to come up with prefab agreements. What are you seeing with the use of prefab, especially in these data centers?
Yeah, it seems to be a large part of these data centers. Cable tray, bus duct, our core type of work that we do and equipment that we put in. But a lot of it is built in a way that, or designed in a way that it can be prefabricated. So I think prefabrication, it's not going away. And it's part of the industry. And as much as we would like to fabricate everything, every single thing on the project, that's not really the way the industry is designed these days. And the data center, I don't know it's going to be exponentially more prefab in the data center world than a traditional manufacturing facility, but it's going to be a key component of it for sure.
Yeah, I think, when you talk about prefab, for me and Paul, when we sit down and talk to the vice presidents about a prefab agreement, our goal was to make sure it was IBEW work.
Sure.
We've purchased those skids in the past from a non-union entity, and then we put them in the data centers and the facilities. Our goal is to make sure that IBEW is not only putting them in, but we're building them as well. So that's one of the reasons why we're trying to address prefab. Now, it might be your sister local or two locals over that's doing the skids, but at least it's done by an IBEW member. That was our goal, to make sure that that job is spread around, that we make sure that IBEW members and their families reap the benefits of those jobs.
You're looking at these rural areas. Staffing obviously has got to be a challenge for some of these locals. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of these locations are in small locals, might only have a few hundred members, and they're going to need 2 or 3 times that for just a data center project or a data center campus. And we have some locals doing some fantastic things, and we are working with the customers to get as much information as early as possible. That's going to be key moving forward. And as you can imagine, that's difficult with non-disclosure agreements and the competition between these companies. That said, we are communicating, and they are getting the message that in order for us to scale up to meet the needs for these projects and the industry long term, we have to have the information as early as we possibly can. So that was a lengthy discussion we had just recently, and the locals really need to embrace every tool in our toolbox. It's that simple. We need to be, once we identify a specific local union or a region where we're going to have some of these projects, we've all got to come together. One small 400-member local is not going to be able to meet the challenge of these types of projects by themselves. So they need to engage with their service reps and their SOCs and their DOCs and tell them what they need, ask for their help. We've got to use the tools like we have in the Workforce Recruitment Task Force, WRTF, in identifying, using modern technology to identify the workers that are in the industry and target specific geographical areas where these projects are happening, and get those folks that want to be in the industry into that local union, into one of those projects. We have to increase our apprenticeship programs dramatically. Frankly, we could double the size of our apprenticeship program as a whole, and I don't know it's going to meet the needs that we have in the next 3 to 5 years. So we really need to get ahead of that. We need to work together again. These local unions that have the projects need to work not just with their sister local unions, but regionally. Across the state or across the district, to assist each other. One local, we have locals that are taking expanding their apprenticeship classes because of projects that are coming in sister local union. So things like that. Frankly, all ideas have to be on the table, and we just have to grow. We have to get
All
out
the
there and
above.
organize, spread the word. We've got to increase apprenticeship. We've got to use all the classifications that we have at our disposal, and it's going to take all of that, I think, in a lot of cases.
I agree.
Secretary Treasurer Noble and myself has had this exact conversation with the officers. And the other thing we say is, while we're doing all these things, we want to maintain the customer base that we currently have. We wrote out a small works agreement with the vice presidents and talked about the usage of Cs and CWs on some of those small jobs. We can't ignore the work that we've done just to fill the big calls. So it's a all-out effort
Right.
to do our very best to make sure we make sure that every customer is being serviced by the IBEW. Every contractor that calls for people, we're able to make sure they get the manpower needed to continue to bid work and continue to keep the work for the IBEW. All the things that Matt talked about is so important to us, and having those conversations, the vice presidents has more tools than they've ever had before. We have the opportunity of a lifetime, of a generation, probably a century, since the founding of electricity back in the early 1900s. It's just an opportunity that we haven't seen ever in my career. And if you look at the history of the IBEW, we really haven't had that type of opportunity before. So we got to meet these challenges together. And Paul and I have been trying to address them with the officers. Matt's doing everything he can with building trades to make sure that we address the issues as well. And we're looking forward to doing more and more work for IBEW and their families.
Kenny, it's just the local unions that have this. You're not out there alone. We have tools and resources to help you. You not only have your district offices, your servicing reps, but you have Matt and his team, and they're more than willing to step up and do everything you need to make certain you have a successful project.
So one of the things you did talk about a little bit was the generation, and we had a conversation about generating electricity for these data center projects and for the community. When we talked a little bit about the nuclear, we're building a small modular reactor right now in Wyoming with Local 322, and we're looking at more and more of those type of projects that could be happening across the United States. I've seen as many as 900 and as small as 300 projections of those small modular reactors, depending on how the industry does and what happens in the industry. So all eyes are on Wyoming in building that project. Can you talk a little bit about that? I know you know some things that's going on there. And
Yeah, I mean, I not only small modular reactors, but full size.
1,000 AAPs.
Yep, AP 1000s. I think honestly, you're going to see. I know the current administration has a goal of seeing a new full size traditional nuclear power plant start before the end of his term. The SMRs, the SMR technology is a game changer. We're in the early stages of that. To your point, the first one's just getting constructed, but there's quite a list of projects that are going to quickly follow. Technology's going to get worked out. And we're going to see SMRs. We're going to see full-size nuclear plants under construction again, and it's all going to be, back to our earlier conversation. It's all going to be necessary and part of the mix. We are seeing a resurgence in gas-fired power plants as well.
Yeah.
We can build those a little quicker than a full-size nuclear power plant.
Yes.
Certainly,
Yes.
They can go on and offline quickly and easily as needed. So you're going to see those really ramp up, and frankly, the scale of some of the gas projects, they're going to be
Bigger.
tremendously large projects. But yes, SMRs, nuclear is enjoying some favorability it hasn't had for quite some time. So that's exciting.
It's a renaissance coming back.
Yeah, it is. It's a perfect term. It's a
I
renaissance.
think when we was building the plant Vogel in Georgia, I believe at the time China built 14 nukes at the same time. So biggest problems for us is regulations, those kind of things that permitting, all that happens early in the nuclear process is pretty much difficult for everyone to grasp and move. Same with transmission lines as you come out of that, where you're going to push it down the line, all those kind of things. So permitting's a big issue, and I know Paul and I've sent some things over to the administration talking about permitting, and hopefully that'll happen faster, not later, as
Right.
We've had those regulations really hard to jump through the hoops to get it done.
Citing and permitting is one of the primary challenges to these projects, without a doubt, and that is another place we can help. We can engage with the owners very early on. We can help them, once they select a site, to get the permitting they need. And I will tell you, as a local union business manager, and I was from a small local in central Pennsylvania, pardon me, you hear about the appreciation and how much the local work we do matters to some of these companies. And in this role, let me tell you, I've seen it does matter to them. Even if it's a Microsoft or a Google or one of the largest companies in the U.S., they recognize, appreciate, and will reciprocate when we help them to get a project cited and permitted. That goes a long way, and just a few members showing up at a zoning board hearing has tremendous impact.
Well, boots on the ground. It's what we offer, and what people forget sometimes too when we're talking about green energy tax credits. Nuclear power is clean energy.
Sure is.
And it's critical. That's another critical element to getting these things built and getting them out there on time, ahead of schedule.
Yep, for sure.
Any last thoughts, Paul? I'll start with you. Any comments you want to make?
No, it's an exciting time, and I just thank you, Matt, for coming in and sharing with our members a little bit of what you do. And I know you're on top of it. Appreciate you, brother.
We're doing our best. Thank you.
Matt, any last comments?
I just maybe want to express to anybody watching, our local unions out there, as Paul said, we're here to help. The construction department, we don't have all the answers, but when we get together with a district office or a local union leadership, there's pretty much not a problem that we can't find the solution to. So reach out. You're not on your own. You're not the only one facing the challenges you're facing, and there is resources. But we've got to think outside the box. And that's a saying that gets used maybe too frequently, but we really do. We can't just continue to approach things the way we always have, because this, to your point, President Cooper, this is a time like none of us that are in the industry now have ever seen before. And it's just tremendous opportunity for all our local unions across the country.
Well, thank you, Matt. Thank you for being here today, but thank you for the work you do every day. I know how much you do every day, and I can't say thank you enough to you and your team. As we head down this path and start looking at all the data center work, all the different work that's coming our way, our goal is the same as the membership's goal, to make sure that every job is an IBEW job. Your skills, your talent is needed out there. And as Matt said, we need to open our doors up to some of those non-union electricians in the industry, bring them in. We have modules made through the Electrical Training Alliance where we can bring their skills up to our level as fast as possible. And we need to take that market share back from the non-union and make it market share for the IBEW and their families. So thank you for now, and we'll catch you on the next podcast.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Tell the world, spread